So unless you've been living under a rock for the past few years, you'll have seen the increased pressure Formula One has come under recently regarding their environmental impact. As mentioned in my last video, the emissions of the Formula One cars themselves is the least of the FIA's worries. But nevertheless, F1 is going to have to make changes to keep every aspect of the sport in line with their newfound green values. Now, to the new Formula One fan who doesn't quite appreciate the legacy of the V10 and V12 engines, the solution may seem simple. Formula E has already paved the future of electric racing, so why wouldn't F1, in the coming years, just follow suit? Now, before you die-hard petrol heads smashing your screens at even hearing this solution being proposed, the truth is it will be very hard for F1 to switch from their current hybrid internal combustion engines to battery power units, and here's why. On the face of it, battery electric vehicles, or BEVs, appear to provide the perfect package for high-performance racing cars, with consistent torque at any RPM and 0 to 100 times that put most gas-guzzling sports cars to shame. The truth, however, is more shady. Whilst a battery electric vehicle may beat an internal combustion engine vehicle in a drag race, it would almost certainly be the first to run out of fuel, and by a long shot. If BEVs were to reach the same ranges as vehicles that run on petrol or diesel, they would require a battery so large and heavy it would send those performance figures from hypercar level fast to Volkswagen up level slow. What's more, it would also totally screw up the handling, particularly when we're talking about racing cars. Now let's consider what would happen if we tried to run a Formula One car on battery power instead of the current V6 engines. A Formula One car uses a maximum of 110 kilograms of fuel per race. In 2022, F1 made the switch from 87 octane fuel to E10 fuel, which has an energy content of about 45 megajoules per kilogram. Therefore, during a race, an F1 car will burn a maximum of 4,950 megajoules worth of fuel. Now, not all of this energy is converted into useful energy, of course. Although efficiency is increased through the use of energy recovery systems from braking and the turbocharger, currently F1's engines have overall efficiencies of around 52%. It should be noted that this figure is extremely impressive considering internal combustion engines, as most road car engines have thermal efficiencies of around 30%. It does mean, however, that the overall energy output of an F1 car is more like 2,475 megajoules. In contrast, Formula E's electric power units convert up to 95% of their energy stored in the battery to mechanical power. So if Formula One cars were to run on electricity, they would require a battery with a capacity of around 2,600 megajoules, assuming that same 95% efficiency as Formula E. Formula E also states that, for their new Gen 3 cars, more than 40% of the energy used in a race comes from regenerative braking. In reality, this would be hard to achieve for Formula One, whose cars have much greater drag forces acting on them. Furthermore, much of Formula E's regen capabilities are due to the presence of a motor on both the front and the rear axle, which would go against the design philosophy of the current F1 cars. Therefore, the previous generation rear-wheel drive Formula E car would provide a more suitable comparison to F1, yet still likely an overestimate, with 25% of the race energy coming from regenerative braking. Taking this into account, the true required capacity of our battery is now around 1,950 megajoules, or 540 kilowatt hours. It is estimated that lithium-ion batteries have a maximum capacity of about 265 watt-hours per kilogram. So for a hypothetical F1 car, the battery weight alone would come in at a whopping 2.06 metric tons. And this is the reason F1 simply can't transition to a battery electric system under the current race format. The cars on the 2022 F1 grid weigh just over 900 kilograms at full fuel loads, and finish the race even lighter as the fuel burns off. In our calculations, the weight of the battery alone comes in at over double this figure. This means that not only would the handling and performance of the car go completely out of the window, but also the car would simply not be able to finish the race. Considering basic Newtonian mechanics, the greater the mass of the car and the battery, the greater the force required to accelerate it, and therefore the more energy is consumed each lap. This leaves us with not enough energy to finish the race. Without making compromises in terms of performance or race duration, a battery electric Formula One car would simply not be physically possible. The theoretical solution to this problem would be a shorter race format at relatively slower speeds, which sounds familiar as that's basically what we have already in Formula E. So besides ditching internal combustion engines and subjectively ruining F1's image, an all-electric Formula 1 series would not be able to offer the type of racing we have today. And given the exponential growth in popularity Formula 1 is seeing at the moment, I think it would be too great a risk for F1 to dramatically change the race format in favour of a greener solution. Now that's not to say that Formula 1 racing can't become entirely carbon free though. Formula 1 is already seriously developing and to some extent pioneering 100% sustainable fuels that are set to be implemented in 2026, allowing races to be run with a net zero carbon footprint without the need to radically change the sport. In the unlikely event that F1 were to eventually go down the electric route, other energy storage technologies, such as the use of hydrogen fuel cells, could prove a more attractive alternative to batteries. At least for now then, we can be reassured that a grid of silent F1 cars will not be something we will see in the near future. I hope you learned something from this video, and if not, you at least found it entertaining. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.